Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got another video on this second generation 2008 Cadillac CTS. Today we are going to be covering a couple of things. The removal of the front bumper cover and also replacement of the headlight bulbs. So we're going to be upgrading the standard halogen bulbs to some brand new LED bulbs. I drove this car the other night and I kind of forgot. I've gotten spoiled with the LED bulbs on the Cadillac XT5, and it's been a while since I've driven this one at night and forgot that the old standard halogen bulbs don't really put out that much light. So excited to get some LED bulbs in this vehicle and hopefully improve the light output. And we'll compare near the end of the video. I've got some footage, some before and after footage. We'll compare those. And so these instructions on bumper cover removal and headlight bulb replacement should apply to any of the second generation Cadillac CTS. That should be 2008 through 2014. Keep in mind, this is the headlight replacement part, is bulb replacement part is really going to apply more to the ones with the standard halogen bulbs. Some of the higher trims had the HID headlights, which of course is a totally different assembly. So for today's video, we're going to be using these LED bulbs by the company AISKITS. I'm going to assume that's how that's pronounced. AISKITS reached out to me and they were kind enough to send these through for a review, and so they have not paid me or told me what to say. I'm just going to give my honest review of them as I install them in the car, but I want to give them a shout out for providing these bulbs. So we do have this car in the lift today, just to make it easier to get to the bottom edge of the bumper cover, but let's start out up top and show you how that comes apart. All right, so the first step is we want to remove this piece of plastic here. That's pretty easy. We've got a bunch of these little plastic clips, looks like 2, 4, 6 in total. And so the way these work is you just turn them, and then once they stop coming up, you just pull on this bottom ring and pull the whole thing out. So that's pretty easy. So we'll get the rest of those done. And sometimes once these get older, the whole thing wants to turn, so you can kind of put a finger on that bottom ring to keep it from moving, and then it will start to unscrew. All right, so the next step is we've got this gasket that's part of this piece of plastic that actually extends up the body of the vehicle, and so it just clips on the body. So we're going to pull off this piece of trim. It just pulls straight up. So we'll pull that off on both sides because it's kind of in the way. And then this, just pull it towards the center of the vehicle. And after that, simply pull this off the car. And so now we've got access to the front of the bumper cover, and we'll cover that next. All right, so next up we've got 4 push clips, 2 on each side, one here and one here, and one here and one here. So we'll go ahead and release those. And we'll just take a screwdriver and pop the center up. And then once the center is up, pop the whole clip out. All right, so next up we do have a couple of 10mm bolts here holding these brackets on, so we'll go ahead and back those out. All right, so the rest of this we're going to go underneath the car. So let's get the lift up so we can access the rest of the fasteners on the bottom of the bumper cover. All right, here we are up under the car. So a lot of videos I've seen on YouTube and other places, this panel here, this engine cover, is missing. And so you may or may not have this panel here. In fact, when we purchased this car, it was missing this panel, and I installed one. So the reason I'm pointing that out is if you see a big hole here that's on your car, that's why. And the other bit of information is if you do have one of these installed from the factory, there may be some additional clips. I can see that there's places for them. I never did install them when I put this piece in here because it seemed to stay in place otherwise. So we're going to talk about the clips over here that attach this bottom bumper to this plastic piece, but you could have a few in the middle here. Now you'll see other clips along this edge. This is just for holding this rubber piece off, so you don't need to take those loose. So the clips that we want to worry about are these ones right here. These other clips are just for this bottom rubber piece, so they don't actually attach to this piece of plastic. So these ones that look like this you can leave in place. The ones in between you want to pull out. Mine are Phillips, although looking on the other side, they're the push clips. I think, you know, they've been replaced. They may be different ones on your car, but the important thing is these ones in the middle of these little, this style ones are the ones you want to remove. And so that should be everything that we need to loosen the underside of the bumper cover on that side, and we'll do the same to the other side. You can see I'm actually missing one over here, and we've got a push clip over here. All right, so everything else will be in the wheel wells, and then as far as I can recall, we should be ready to pull the bumper off. All right, here we are over on the driver's side wheel well. As far as I can recall, we've got a clip here and a clip here, and I think there's a bolt up in here. I think that's all we have to pull loose, so I'm gonna try to do this without having to turn the wheel and all that kind of stuff, so we'll see. So pulling those clips out has given us just enough wiggle room to access a bolt that is right here. It's a little 8mm bolt. And so that kind of is pushed up into the quarter panel here. And so now this will pop right out. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other side. And this probably would have been easier to do had I cut the wheels one way or the other, but I didn't, so here we are. All right, there's our 8mm on that side. And that's loose now. So we're gonna go ahead and let the car down a little bit and pull that front bumper off. All right, and now the front bumper cover should pull straight off. All right, so now we are ready to start getting into pulling the headlights out. I would say that a good rule of thumb is if you're going to do any type of bulb changes or replacements on this vehicle, since you do have to go to all that trouble to get to them, to go ahead and run a test on your high and your low beams and your turn signals and your parking lights and all that kind of stuff, and make sure there's no other bulbs out that need to be replaced. So each of these headlights is held in place by 3 8mm bolts, one right here, one down here, and one up top. So let's go ahead and get those loose. And since this is all plastic, I'm going to use hand tools on this. All right, I believe we should be ready to lift the headlight out now. Just pull it straight towards the front of the vehicle. And then there is going to be a wiring harness on the bottom side that we need to disconnect. And I guess we don't really have to disconnect this, but it's just going to make it easier to work on the light. And there's a little tab you push on right here, and that pulls off. So there's not really any specs on the box, but if I've looked up the right ones on Amazon, these are 60 watt equivalent LED bulbs. They're supposed to be rated at 10,000 lumens, and they are 6500K white bulbs. These are the H11 size, and they've sent me 2 sets, presumably one for the high beams and one for the low beams. And these bulbs are rated at 30,000 hours of life. So let's go ahead and unbox one of these and see what they look like up close. All right, some very nice packaging here. So we've got a user manual included with just some basic information. All right, so the specs are in here. This is saying a 6000K color temperature. Looks like the rest of the specs are the same. And we've got some registration information here, and they say that if you register them, you can get an extra 12 months warranty, so that's pretty neat. All right, so you can see these are packaged very nicely here. So let's take a closer look at the bulbs themselves. All right, here's a close-up shot of one of the bulbs. So looks like we've got an LED on both sides of this big fin, and a nice big heat sink, and a pigtail to plug into the existing wiring harness. And something I found pretty interesting is there's a teeny tiny cooling fan here on the bottom. So I guess that will help dissipate the heat generated by the LED on this heat sink. And I kind of like to see that operating, so I think before we put them in the headlights, we'll test it out and see what that looks like. All right, so also included in the box is this little carabiner and keyring, and some gloves for installation. I think the idea is you're not actually supposed to get your fingers on the bulb itself. Probably down here on the heat sink, like I've got it, is just fine, but nice of them to include some gloves. All right, so I've got the headlight up here on the bench, and so there's 2 covers on the back of the headlight, one for the high beams and one for the low beams, and each one of them is held in place by 3 7mm bolts. So we're just going to go ahead and pull those out, and that should give us access to the existing bulbs. All right, so now we've got access to this bulb. And so this is the upper bulb that's behind the projector. I believe this is the low beams, if I'm not mistaken. And I think this is just going to twist out. Yep. And then we can pull it out just like that. And then to remove the wiring harness from the bulb, we've got a little clip right here, and we're just going to push that clip and pull the connector off, just like that. All right, so now we've got our fancy white gloves on to keep the new bulbs clean. And so the interesting thing here is, if you look really close at this plug on the new bulbs, we've got a plus and a minus here. You know, incandescent bulbs, you know, they don't care about polarity, but LEDs do. And evidently they've got this marked, but I'm also seeing that this will actually fit in this connector either way, and you know, the 2 wires that are coming out of here are both black, so we don't have a real clue as to what goes where. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of experimenting before we put this back together to figure out which direction it goes. But I'll do it so you don't have to. All right, guys, so I've got the headlight kind of put back on the car enough to where I could get to this plug. And so, fun little fact, and it's funny because I think I remember reading this somewhere, but the plus and the minus and the plug threw me off. So these are actually set up in such a way that it doesn't matter which way you plug them in. So they've done some sort of wizardry in the circuits in this bulb that allows it to work either direction. So we can just go ahead and plug it in the one direction. I'm sorry, that's probably blowing out the camera. And now I'm going to flip it around the other way. And it still works. So that's really cool. And the fan is turning. I can't hear the fan, but I can see and feel the fan. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get that on without the camera blowing it out, but it's pretty neat. So there, now you can see the fan spinning, so that's pretty neat. Pretty cool little design. Hopefully that little fan will last a good long time, but that's a neat idea. I like that. All right, so we're back here on the bench ready to do our final installation of the new bulbs. So I'm going to go ahead and snap this in like we were talking about earlier. And see if we've got enough room to push this pigtail back into the light somewhere. Yeah, no problem. And we just have to line up those tabs on the LED bulb and twist it back to the left in place. And it does look like this one sticks out maybe a little bit further, but it looks like we have plenty of clearance with the factory cover. All right, got that top cover back on. Let's do the same thing for the bottom. While I appreciate the fancy white gloves that were included in the bulbs, I went back to my disposable gloves because the white color on the on those gloves that were included were kind of blowing out my the contrast on my camera, or the exposure. So tip to, what is it, AISKITS, I don't know. Include black gloves. All right, so same kind of thing here. I'm gonna twist it out. And the gasket is sticking a little bit, but as far as I know, these are original to the car because I've never put any on it. And so this design is a little bit different. It's got little clips on either side. Seem like they might be a little more fragile. So you can see these clips on the left and the right. And I think we just are gonna pull them out and kind of gradually, yep, push that back. And then it comes out. Curious to see if the replacement bulb has those same side clips. Let's see how good they are. All right, here's the new bulb, and yes, it does look like they have little clips, and just like the factory one. Great. All right, so we'll just tuck this pigtail into the headlight, and a little easier to look at the tabs before you stick it in. To line it up and twist it in place. All right, so that's in there. And we'll go ahead and throw this cover on, and we will do a test before we put the headlight completely back in and the bumper cover on. So we'll make sure to check these. All right, so I've just kind of plugged the headlight back in and just laid it in place to make sure both of the bulbs work. So let's see what these things are all about. Wow. Holy cow. What a difference. That's insane. And just that bright white, brilliant light compared to the yellow light on the halogen. That's, I mean, it just gives it a whole different look. Let's check the high beams. Great. Look at this, guys. This is insane. I mean, we'll do some nighttime drive tests and whatnot, but I mean, look at the difference there. That's quite a difference between the left and the right there on the garage door. Yep, that's a big improvement. All right, let's get this headlight back in place. Just want to rock it back where it was, and we'll go ahead and start these, all three of these 10mm bolts. Actually, it's 2 bolts and it's a nut down here on the bottom. And you really just want to go snug with these things because, again, you've got a plastic headlight assembly here, so if you over tighten it, you're going to end up breaking these tabs, especially on a 13-year-old car. All right, so the passenger side light is going to be the same process, so I'm not going to film that whole thing, but we'll go ahead and get that swapped out, and then we'll put the bumper cover back on, which is basically going to be a reverse of what we've just seen. And then we'll do some before and after nighttime driving tests for you. All right, so we've got both headlights back in the car and they're tested, they're working, they look fantastic. So let's go ahead and push this bumper back on and clip everything back in place. And like I said, this is basically the reverse of what you've already seen. And one thing I'll mention, there is a little lip underneath each headlight, and so the bumper does need to slide into that little lip when you push it back on. All right, that does it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I really like the look these LED lights give our CTS. It gives it an updated look, and I appreciate AISKITS for reaching out and letting me try them out. And we'll have a link in the description below, so if you want to purchase some for your CTS, go check them out. Thanks for watching, and consider subscribing.